Rob Haroun is president of Sur Development, the luxury home construction firm. In his 30 years in Westport, Rob has built over 250 residential homes and a number of commercial buildings as well. He's deeply involved in the community, serving on the boards of the Westport Weston Family Y and the Westport Library, and overseeing construction projects for both of them. Also very involved in the conservative synagogue, and he sent his 3 children through the Westport schools. Home construction is a hot topic in Westport, from architecture to tree removal, size to setbacks. Everybody's got an opinion. And today we'll dive into the business of home building from a builder's point of view. Rob Haroun, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here, and glad to be here. Thank you.
So let's start at the beginning. How do you become a builder, specifically a builder in Westport?
Well, that's a very good question. I didn't plan on becoming a builder. I started off as an engineer, went to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, RPI, got a mechanical engineering degree, worked a little bit at General Dynamics, EB, building submarines. My dad, also an engineer, was in the home renovation business. So after school and Saturdays and Sundays, I helped him out. So I did roofing, I did framing, I did a little bit of electrical work, not a lot. I did a lot of plumbing work and clean up. So it was a very hands-on with my dad, and who unfortunately just passed away about a month ago. Oh. So it's so that's how I got my hands wet in terms of construction and a broad base. And then moving to Westport, I actually after General Dynamics, I went to law school. So I actually became a patent attorney for a while. So I did intellectual property, patents, copyrights, trademarks, and the firm still has my name in New York City. And after that, I was practicing law and doing stuff on the side. But what the real impetus was the 1993 storm that flooded out houses in the Saugatuck Shores area.
The unnamed storm.
The unnamed. There's so many storms now. I'm like they're all blended in.
That was a bad one.
That was a bad one. Yes, that was. So my wife and I were both working in the city. Julie, by the way, she's supporting me here. Thank you, Julie, for stopping by. So with that unnamed storm, wiped out a lot of houses, and we were living in the city. Didn't have any kids yet. We were just married. Her parents had a summer house since 1962 on Saugatuck Shores. So I used to come up here all the time, and making that turn around Harbor Road, that's an amazing, that to see the blue water, to see the sailboats out there, to see Campo across that just blew me away. And I said, you know what, I'm moving here. This is in 92, 93. So long story short, houses got flooded. We bought a house that got flooded. It was on elevation 8, I believe, when we bought it, and maybe even lower. So we basically said, I said, listen, you know what, I can put something together. Let me try to renovate it, with my skill set, with my dad, and so that's how we started SIR. And frankly, doing our first house, we never intended to do house number 2. Oh. It was only when my wife was 6 months pregnant, and Bill Galt had a couple lots for sale down in the Campo Commons area, that I said to my wife, he said, well, yeah, this is going pretty well. Maybe we should do another one. And she smiled and she said, sure, whatever you want.
Wow. And the hell with patents.
That's right. That's right.
So what does a builder actually do? I mean, I imagine it begins with finding property, but what are the steps that you go through from start to finish? Right.
So, a lot of people, they look at someone who builds and says, oh, he's a builder, or he's this. There's really different aspects to it. There's development, there's construction, which is the building end, and then there's ground up real estate development. And we're sort of in the latter, where ground up real estate development is. A builder, for example, will do a lot of custom work. So, for example, you want to put a renovation, you want to redo your bathroom, your kitchen. That's a builder. That's a builder type of developer would probably buy a piece of land, figure out what type of house they want to build, and maybe do a custom on it, or maybe do a semi-custom. And I'll get into that later as to the differences. But what we do is, ground up real estate development. We'll analyze a piece of property. We'll take a look at it, and we'll say, okay, what does the town need? What's the best use here? What can we add? What'll from a financial point of view, as well as from a community point of view, what type of add? So we view ourselves as, we have our own construction team. It's not just me and my wife. That we have about 20 or so people that work for the company. But it's not just us, as I said, and a lot of times I'm here and I'm getting the glory or whatever it is, and I get interviewed by Dan Woog, and there's a lot of people behind me that really do a lot of the heavy lifting. So to answer your question as to builder, that's sort of how you break up the categories of a builder, developer, and a ground up real estate developer.
Can you give an example of specific property? You look at it, what goes through your mind, and how do you go through that?
Good question. Treadwell Avenue, for example. That's I'm on my third house on that street, and a lot of these neighborhoods, I'll say, okay, I did 9 in here, I did 7 in here, I did this whole street, I did this, I did that, and it's over 30 years. It's not like, but Treadwell is a good example. Because we started at Treadwell at the top of the hill, intersection of Treadwell and not Hogan, but
Indian Hill.
Indian Hill, right? Indian Hill, right there. We started with that house, and this was right at the pandemic, right when it hit. And great family moved into town. They wanted a pool. We added a pool, and this was ground up real estate development. So in other words, we decided what house to put on the property. We said, you know what, it's a busy corner, but you know what? It's walk to town. And we hit it right on the nail because we're going to be doing our third house now. And that's what people want. People want to be able, they moved from the city. They wanted to be able to take the strollers with their down the sidewalk, which was newly paved, walk into the Saugatuck community, go for an ice cream, go for dinner. And so moved into our second house on Treadwell. And the same thing, they moved from Brooklyn, with 2 kids, 1 special needs, and they looked at the schools and they said, wow, Westport has a lot better than the surrounding towns, accommodates for special needs, and they moved right away. They bought the house before the foundation was even in, and they also want the ability to walk to school. So to answer your question, what goes into it, it's analyzing really what your buyer wants. Some buyers want, an acre. Well, it used to be pre-pandemic. You've heard of the housing where you couldn't give houses away. Weston had a terrible, or anything north of the Merritt. If someone brought me a piece of property, if someone called me and it was north of the Merritt, I would say, sorry, I'm passing. Now it's totally changed. So, to answer your question, it's analyzing what the buyers want. Like the walk to town is the Treadwell. I would never have bought it pre-pandemic, but now post-pandemic, I'm buying properties north of the Merritt on 2 acres. They have pools, pool houses, accessory dwelling units, things like that. All those things that are. So it's trying to analyze what the market is.
So Treadwell is a great example. It has a lot of historic homes, some of which are architecturally significant, and some of which are, older homes that, have probably passed their sell-by date.
Right.
Does that, how much does historical architecture, factor into what you do?
That's a very good question, and you're pulled. This is something that over 30 years I've worked a lot with the HDC, the Historic District Commission, because as most people know, if the house is over 50 years old, you have to go and get a demo. We have to get a waiver of your demo delay, which is 180 days. So what we try to do is when we look at a house, obviously we won't. we're looking at our home buyer. A home buyer is not going to buy a 1,800 square foot house, even though there might be a need for that in town. But a home buyer coming from Brooklyn with 2 kids, special needs or whatever, is not going to cram themselves into an 1,800, which that's what's there now. So they want the 9-foot ceilings, they want the 2-car garage, they have a checklist, they have a box of all the things, a big playroom for the kids. But in terms of addressing architecturally, we try to keep it in scale to what's rested. But you got to remember that a lot of Westport was developed in the 50s and 60s. I call it the I Love Lucy generation. So there's a lot of splits, a lot of raised ranches. Some of them have been improved, some of them haven't. So we're doing something on Warnock right now. It's under contract. That was Warnock and Silverbrook and that area. And that whole area, that was all splits. And some people renovated it, some people didn't. And if you drive by on Warnock, maybe 50%, 60% of the houses have been knocked down, and these larger homes are built in keeping with a 1-acre parcel. But you try to fit in within the neighborhood. That's really because when a homeowner comes to buy a house, they don't want to be the odd one out, like the one with the flat roof or with the green standing seam metal roof or something. They don't want that. They want something that blends in, but it has to fit their needs. And that's there's a lot of people out there that say, well, you're knocking down an 1,800 square foot house and that's affordable. Or people can, of course it's affordable. Of course, that there's a need for that. But there's also a need for, from people coming out of town. Westport's transient. It's always been a transient town. It's people come in here for the schools, for the amenities, and I don't want to use the word leave, but they go to other pastures. There are very few families such as the Galts and the Nevises and and there's others that are in town, multi-generational. It's not that, and I think that's a good thing, because with that multi-generational, it's all of a sudden people say, you know what? Oh, we have to check with this and we have to check with that. It's because it's new and vibrant, and you can create your own place here.
When you're dealing with home buyers, has that changed over the 30 years? Are they,
That's a great question. Because I can, this is only half an hour. I can go on. You might be booked here till 5 p.m. I don't know. Absolutely. When I first started, a lot of people, a lot of my homeowners bought my houses. Then they'll say, okay, you know what? I'll finish this. I'll do this. I'll do this on my own. They came in with tools, with hammers and drills and power saws and part of our we have a builder's warranty, and we also have a warranty program. So what we do is we come back and fix things. So our level of fixing things, of doing things for the homeowner, has increased dramatically. And there's no TaskRabbit out here. There's no in the city. That's where it is. But it's absolutely changed. They have less tools. They do less on their own. And the question is, let me just hire the guy. That's what we're seeing now. And in this digital age, when people can compare and price shop and talk to other of their friends and relatives and say, well, you know what? I just installed a nice pizza oven and it's great and this and that. And who did you use? Well, I'll use this Mason contractor. And then all of a sudden, the next week, all of a sudden they're putting in a pizza oven with a barbecue and a patio and a pool house and all. That has changed. It used to be. Now it's. We had a house that moved in about 4 years ago. I'm not going to give the address, but basically, prior to closing, they asked me, "Can I move stuff into the garage?" I said, "Fine, as long as it's boxed, as long as it's not, from your own house and you're just moving a couch there." No, I'm talking like deliveries. So in other words, retail deliveries. All of a sudden, I walk in there. The garage is a 3-car garage. It's full. So before they moved in, they got every piece of furniture from Restoration Hardware, from West Elm, from their mattresses were delivered. Everything was delivered in their garage and ready to be unfolded, unpacked, maybe even assembled, so that they could move in and have instant house.
Wow.
And that's changed. You know, my wife and I, we built our first house. We never furnished our living room till 10 years later. You know, it was just the kids had the little tyke, you know, running around, and you know, that was our living room. I mean, that's. But yeah, no, it's changed.
And in terms of architecture, has that changed as well?
Absolutely. And you know, right now I call it the black window craze. You know, every new construction house has black framed windows, which I personally like. I look, it gives it a very grounded approach. But you got to remember, back in the 90s when I started, every bit of hardware was polished brass, from your doorknobs to your kitchen pulls to your closets. There was, you know, like the closets were. But yeah, no, it's changed. It's changed a lot. That's.
And what are the challenges to what you do? The challenges, obstacles.
Well,
what keeps you up at night?
Okay, so that's a three-part question. Let's start with your neighbors. You know, no one wants change. No one likes change. You know, someone comes in. You know, Mrs. Smith has been living next door for 40 years. She raised her kids. You know, it's nice. It's an overgrown piece of property. The trees are all in order. You know, or not in order, but they're there. They're mature. You know, she comes in and out. All of a sudden, you know, someone comes in, buys the land, and you know, we talked about this. You know, starts cutting down trees, and it's like all of a sudden, it's like, what's going on? And now they're taking down their 1,800 square foot house, and they're building a 6,000 or 5,000. So the neighbors on one end, you know, it's like people don't like change. I mean, I have a new construction house being built next to me. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, you know, maybe I should have bought it. Maybe I should have done that. Maybe, you know. But you know what? No one likes change. It's you know, everyone's comfortable. You know, you have a nice pair of shoes. They're very comfortable. They're fitting. You go try something else, and they hurt. They pinch. You know, so that's the first obstacle. The second obstacle is, and I'm not using it as the word obstacle, but the challenge. It's because we try to. The homeowners themselves, and it's not the homeowners, but their use of the internet and the thought that they know better or that someone knows better because they did a Google search. And I'll give you a perfect example. We had a homeowner wanted a gas fireplace log set. We went to our vendor, a trusted vendor, done many years, great installation, great service, great. We get a price. We add it's a cost plus 20%, so we added 20% to the price, and all of a sudden we sent it to the homeowner. Needless to say, the homeowner goes online. Says, well, I can get it shipped direct on such and such. I said, fine, okay, I'll charge you for the installation of this log set that goes inside the fireplace. You just turn it on, flick it on with a, you know. So in other words, we go and all of a sudden we install it, and we're looking for the flick it on, the remote. No, the price that she was quoted was for the non-remote. It had a button on the side. So we're trying to figure out now to try to, you know, okay, I really want the remote. I said, this is your log set. We were going to give you the remote. We weren't one to check that, okay, this log set came. So a lot of times the internet can be very helpful, but it also can be dangerous. And if you have trust in someone and if you rely on that person, then I think you should rely on them and not second guess, I can save $100 or $50 or whatever. I mean, it's you know, the other thing is that we have a vast network of suppliers in this area that need to keep their kid, you know, their pay their taxes, pay their salaries, you know, pay salaries of employees, keep their kids in school, and you know, for us to keep getting things from the internet or online and not use our eventually that's going to dry up. I mean, look at Claf's. Well, that was another reason why it went. But, you know, now, you know, that's no longer here. You can't just go to here and, you know, that was, but that had to do with the internet, big, you know, and we talked previously about hardware stores. How many used to be? 4 or 5 used to be in town. Now is, I call it 1.5. It's the Home Depots are putting about, people get things. I had a story of someone for the power outage. All of a sudden he orders, his extension cables, his pumps, his this, all pre-orders it. Storm didn't come. The next day they send it all back.
Wow.
I'm like, I never really thought of that.
I want to go back to trees. They are a constant source of discussion in Westport. There are reasons that you come in and remove trees.
Yes.
What are they?
Okay. First of all, obviously, if you're going from an 1,800 square foot house to a 5,000 square foot house, you need a bigger area. So that's the first reason. Second reason is that going back to my example of a 1950, 1960 house that Mrs. Smith has lived in for 40 years and is not really, I'm not going to use the word maintained, but hasn't really pruned or taken care of the trees. That's a generation where, the trees are trees, let them live, let them, this generation's more, okay, I'm pruning, I'm more selective. So as it becomes overgrown, things become weakened. Trees have a lifespan. When it's a shock value, I'm just driving down the Post Road, right behind Splash. They cleared out every tree for that. There's a multifamily that's going in there. That's on a slope. Frankly, I think that was the right thing to do because there's no tree that would have survived, given that, that intense, but as I said, people are a little scared of change. And when they have a nice, quiet, treed, peaceful lot, now that's looking at a bunch of dirt that's, with a silt fence and gravel and that's the second item. The third item is my homeowner. And I've gone through this multiple times where I've actually cordoned off certain trees. Well, first of all, there's certain trees that I don't use the word have should not even been planted, and that's the white pine. That's something that it's a cheap, inexpensive tree. It grows fast. But after a couple of years, it's softwood, so that'll all break and fall and hurt someone. So that's the first tree that should, these mighty oaks, obviously we try to save them, and we have done that numerally. But what happens is that the homeowner and their building inspector, when they're getting ready, they say, well, you know what, this branch is within striking distance of this or within that, or you know what, let's take the tree down. So it costs a lot more money to take the tree down afterward, as opposed to just taking it down and clearing it out. When I personally go in and clear every lot, I don't want to do that. That's not something that we're over on 12 Godfrey right now, which I think you put it on, is on the, we saved 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trees. And we moved the house in order to a nice maple. But I'm willing to bet that someone's going to come along and say, listen, you know what, that tree's too close to the house, or I don't feel comfortable, or this and that. And plus, depending on the tree, maples have a very shallow root system. So if you disturb it, it's going to die. Oaks are great; they'll live forever. It's a, and then all the types of. But as I said, to go back and answer your question. It's the shock value. It's seeing the raw dirt that says, oh, they denuded the property, or they. But in reality, if you come back and you look to see what was planted, it might not be a 1-to-1, but when the property was initially cleared, when it was initially developed in the 50s, it pretty much looked the same.
Misconceptions. What are there misconceptions out there about what you do and how you do it?
Well, that's another touchy question. I've been doing this for 30 years. I built 250 homes. Everyone says, oh, developers are making too much money. Developers they're greedy. They're not giving back to the town. They're not giving back to the community. They're just in it. They don't even live here. I'm on these multiple boards. My kids have gone through school here, all 3 of them, from preschool. I'm on my synagogue board. We're doing a renovation now on that end. So I think the misconception, and I think what it is I don't want to use the word envy, but they're saying, "Oh, look at this guy. I could have done that. I could have built that house. I could have. You know what? You want to build a house? Go ahead." So my wife always jokes around and says, "I make it look easier than it really is," and it's dealing with multiple subs, neighbors, construction, financing it, homeowners at the end. It's a whole. It's not. When I practiced law, I went into my office. I did a brief for this and that. I submitted it. Went to court, whatever that type of thing is. This and that, and it was very one-dimensional because I had one client. But now but now it's many, and you're basically the for lack of a better word. I don't mean to say myself as you're the director or the maestro that tells someone in an orchestra when to play. So the bass section, okay, now it's your turn. The trombones, now it's your turn, and the speed and the tempo. And during the 6 to 9 months that you're building a house, you're directing that orchestra, or people under you are directing that orchestra. And that's what, but as I said, to answer your question, there's listen, people are naturally, they look to see what I've done. They look to see what other people have done. Oh, well, he's done what that's that. A lot of it is that.
Yeah. You didn't mention town officials. What's it like dealing
well,
in this town?
This town is really good. I've worked in other towns before. Zoning departments under Mary Young, fantastic. I mean, what a great replacement for the prior zoning office. She's great. People under her staff. I mean, really, I can't give enough kudos to that. And the the town, with Steve Smith and the two building officials there, they're very, very professional. They recognize that if you're pouring footings, which are concrete, you got to get it inspected in the morning because the concrete comes at 1:00. You can't get it inspected at 2:00. It's the concrete's in the truck, all hardened, and so they understand that. So they work with you, and that's a great conservation. Another great one. Colin is great. Alicia's great. All great people to work with, and they have this now Excella. The only thing I think that there's room for improvement is the health department.
Uh-huh.
So
how do you deal with the health department?
Like septic systems and pools and I think right now their backlog. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's like 5 to 6 weeks.
Wow.
So you submit an application for a new house with an approved engineered plan. You're waiting 6 weeks before you get an approval to go to zoning.
Wow.
So that's I know they're hiring people, but because it's a separate entity, I feel I got to keep my mouth shut.
Wetlands. You deal with wetlands
yes,
too?
Yes, conservation. Colin and Alicia and Colin and then they'll come out. They'll do a site inspection. They'll say, "Listen, can we take care of this tree? Can we take care of that tree? We'll plant some plantings in order to from buffer." As long as you know the regulations, it's 30 feet if you're putting in a new patio, you got to be away for the 35 feet for a pool and 50 feet for a house. Mm-hmm. So it's very simple. But yeah, conservation, they're great people to work with and on that end. Getting back to zoning, I mean, the boards are great. And excuse me? I got a little comment from my peanut gallery here, but yeah. So in terms of the boards, they're great. Planning and zoning, ZBA. But there's one thing I want to talk about. We're talking about trees, and back in the early part of the year, around January, February, there was a huge push to prohibit the removal of any tree in a setback 12 inches or bigger. I am adamantly against that, because it's just not it's not right. It's just not, a 12-inch tree that's in a. So if I live in a 2-acre piece of property, 50-foot setbacks all the way around, I can't remove a tree if it's 12 inches or more. I have to go and get a permit. It's a prohibition unless it's diseased. So now I got to get a licensed arborist to come in, and then now I got to file a permit and do this. Hopefully that's dead. Hopefully that's because that's and there's other conditions. So in other words, let's say I have a sewer lateral, and that's that's already the town put on the property to connect to sewer, and there's a tree next to it, and I have to remove the tree, and that tree is in the setback, and it's over 12 inches. I can't remove it. It's just not. It's well conceived. It's well intended, but just the execution would be. I'll give you a perfect example. 2 neighbors get together. They say, you know what, this tree's dead. It's in the setback. It's on the property. I'll split the cost with you. They can't take it down. Or, you know what, it's leaning over here. It's a little too much here. Can't take it down. It's in the setback. It's prohibited. It's not like, they'll allow you to do it. No, it's and then they talked about replacement, and hopefully that's dead, but that's something that every Westporter should be really concerned about. And trees do have lifespans. I mean, they're and unless they're maintained and fertilized, and it's I'm a big tree hugger. I'm as long as they're not too close to the house.
Sure. You mentioned zoning, planning and zoning, ADUs.
Yes.
Accessory dwelling units.
Yes.
Is that going to change now that they're legalized, and these are small apartments or units on a bigger property?
Yeah.
Is that going to change the way you build?
Yeah, actually, it has. We put up our first ADU. We actually were the first ones, I believe, that applied for one. We did one off of Hills Point, 149 Hills Point. It's an ADU, and basically, what an ADU it's you're allowed to build 650 square foot on a footprint, on a footprint, and they have some work to do about roof lines and I think they'll be going to be tweaking a couple things. But their intent was 650 square feet on the first floor and 650 square feet on the second floor, so that you can have a 1,300 square foot building, so that an in-law, you could rent it out, you could have but I think that's a great idea. I think it's just you got to work out a little bit more in terms of how the roof lines are going to look and how big and dormers and all that other stuff on that end.
Future trends. What's coming down the pike that people may not be thinking about or talking about yet, but that are on your radar?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because we're pretty much tapped into what the homeowner wants now. And I mean, listen, I started building, no one put a generator in. Now every house, generator. We started building, the pool was like a safety thing. Oh no, I'm never going to have a pool because my little Jimmy is going to go in there, and then now there's auto covers that you can close the pools. So now it's every house over 3 million now is probably having a pool. Geothermal wells. I mean, that's something that's we're hearing a lot about compounds now. People are buying houses, having families, and building 4 houses, 3 houses, or 2, or so that way. But home gardening, where they actually have outdoor vegetables and raised beds, and that's another big thing. But in the work from home environment, that's so. In other words, a lot of our houses will have 2 work from home offices, fully outfitted, and you separate apart, not next to the kitchen or family room and this and that, because there's a lot of these homeowners have two incomes, and so they need to be, and for the kids or for this and that. But it's tough to predict 5 to 7 years out, because obviously we've got an economy that is sort of bouncing. We've got interest rates that are heading up. We've got a war in Europe that really no one wants to grapple with. We're sort of insulated here on that. But I can get in prison for that, right?
Not at all.
So the 5-year trend, that's tough to predict, but I can tell you what in the next, everyone wants a generator, everyone wants a pool.
Solar?
That hasn't taken off in Westport. And I think that it has to do with aesthetics.
Mm-hmm.
People have to grapple with the fact that if I'm driving by, I've got these plates of glass on my roof, and it sort of ruins the architecture. If it's on the south side and that's on the back side of the house, okay, that might be more, but I don't, no one's asked me to, and none of the houses that I've built have actually put solar in, and none of them that I know. The 250, I drive by them all the time, but as far as I know, there might be, but Tesla charging stations, I put those in regularly. Wow. You know, so they're the 220 volts for that, and that's maybe about 50% that will pre-wire or will for charging. I mean, Tesla generic, you know, EV.
Yeah.
So that's something that. The other thing is that, you know, listen, and it's just a statement of who everyone is that, you know, there's a lot of flow restrictors and water control devices that are put in and mandated by the government. You know, it's like, who wants to take a shower with a little stream? It's like, as soon as I get my CO, the homeowner says to me, it's okay, remove all the water restrictors and you know, it is what it is.
They're calling the shots.
That's right.
So just a couple more. You've built 250 homes.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite?
Yes, I do. It's my house.
Great answer.
It took me 2 years to build it too, and normally it's between 6 to 9 months, but it's the house that I'm in right now.
Nice. Well,
and it's not a big house. It's not a, you know, it's just perfect for us.
Perfect. That's great. Last question. You get a magic wand. You can buy any property in Westport, build anything, anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Where would you do it, and what would you build?
Anything, build anything, right?
Anything you want.
Okay, anything I want. The Izzo property, which is the garden center right now. That's probably like the last.
On the Post Road, near
yeah.
Stop and Shop?
Yep, near across from the Honda dealership.
Yeah.
There's a consignment shop in the front. There's a Bar Lupa, which is the restaurant. And then
that one.
That one, yeah. It's a big one. It goes really deep. That would be, if the town were to acquire it or the town were to get it, that would be a great affordable, like a mixed-use affordable, where you can get 50% affordable, maybe put 300, 400 units in there. Would it change the character of Westport? Yeah, but I think it would affect, it would solve a lot of our, listen, you're never going to solve the housing problem because it's just too big. It's, it's between the cost of materials and between a NIMBY attitude with homeowners, with property owners. It's I just went through it with 1480 Post Road, and trying to get 32 units in there, 7 of which are affordable. But that's a property that the town should, the town should keep their eyes on if it ever comes to the market. And I know in Darien they just bought an island for 50-something million or 60 million, and to keep it open space.
Yeah.
But if something like that comes up, the town should look at it and say, okay, you know what, we can put some affordable here, and we can, and address our needs. But it's got to be a little proactive, because there's other developers out there that are not me. I'm not. It's a little too big for me. But that'll come in and buy it, but that's something that the town should keep their eye on.
Interesting. I've driven by that and never thought of it, but you're the developer. You've got those eyes. Rob Haroun, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I learned a lot.
Thank you.
You bet.